We've rolled back our football prices. WagerTalk's first full year was 2015, and we've lowered our football season packages to match what we charged that football season. Why? It's simple. We want to make our season-long packages an extraordinary value. You can buy a full college football season or full NFL season for only $5.99 each. But if you buy a college football NFL combo from the same handicapper, you pay only $8.99. Looking to mix and match handicappers? We have you covered. Just email support@wagertalk.com for a bundle discount and to create any handicapper combo you can dream of. Would you like to bet $20 and win $100 at BetMGM regardless of your wager's outcome and get $100 in free wager bucks? Just go to wt.buzz/MGM for more details and find out if you're eligible for this amazing offer.
Welcome into college football today. Best damn college football show, the Wednesday edition. Ralph Michaels, Robbie Veno. I am Drew Martin. Guys, we're breaking down 4 games with excessive analysis here. Ralph with the pen. Always good to see you. I haven't seen you in like 8 years, Ralph. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome in.
I guess it depends what month it is, but it is Christmas time for college football fans.
That's a good comparison there, Ralph. I don't know. I think you can make an argument both ways. Week 1 of college football and that first weekend of March Madness, they are high on, I know on my list, probably a lot of watchers' lists as well. And I know another guy's list that it's both of them are very high on, and that's Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter, WagerTalk.com. Robbie, welcome in, buddy.
Good to be back with you guys, Drew. I would throw bowl season in that mix because bowl season gets me all cranked up every year as well. So these are really good times of year. Obviously, we get to do these shows, quite a few of them during the week to discuss these games. And I mean, after last year, guys, remember we started real early in April with conference previews, and we were optimistic, but we didn't know we were going to get a season. We did get one. This year looks like no matter what, we're going to get a season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robbie. Last year, and guys, I know for Robbie Veno and Ralph here, we really appreciate everybody reaching out on Twitter through other means as well, asking about the show. Is it coming back? Well, sure enough, here we are. We're ready to rock for this year as well. But like Robbie was talking about last year, we were doing the conference previews, not even 100% sure if the games were going to be played. It was a lot of fun, though. I learned a lot from both Ralph and Robbie. So hopefully throw out some good knowledge here, get you on the right side of some of these games that we're breaking down, 4 of them actually. And I guess we can start off here. Alabama and Miami, one of the marquee matchups of this weekend. We're seeing the Alabama Crimson Tide, Ralph, minus 18, actually being bought up here, minus 19 in the hook. Over under of 63.5 at the open, Ralph. We're down to about 61, controlled climate, fast track there. But I'm not all that surprised to see some under money here, Ralph, because, we got quarterback, I guess, coming off of an injury on the Miami side. Alabama, of course, working in a new quarterback as well. 2 solid defenses. So I kind of agree with that move. I'd look towards the under, but I'll throw it over to you, man. Thoughts on Alabama, Miami, Ralph?
I agree. Drew, my power rating is 17, and I give Alabama a 1.5 point edge here. This, of course, is basically their second home, Alabama, where they play the SEC championship. So the number is very close to where I had it. But when I look at Alabama, everyone talks about who they lost the quarterback, Pat Surtain, and the 2 games that they got mauled last year. Mississippi, they gave up 48 points. Florida, they gave up 46 points. But I want you to remember this. Last year, they had Pat Surtain in the secondary, but he was the only returning starter. They had 3 new DBs. So when they gave up all those points early, we saw them improve throughout the year up until that Florida game. So they had 1 bad game with an experienced secondary. This year, 3 DBs are back. Yes, they lose Surtain, but they are my best defense by far. The D-line, the linebackers, the secondary all rank top 5 or 6 in the entire country. The unit as the whole is number 1. Bryce Young, again, you're going with a freshman quarterback, and I think we're going to see a more conservative play calling. Of course, you lose your OC, Sarkisian, to Texas, so we'll see if he presses that downward ball as much as they have. I look at Miami. I think they're going to be improved defense under Diaz. De'Aaron King, yes, he tore his ACL in the bowl game, but all reports are he's 100%. So, in this game, when I match up Alabama's defense against De'Aaron King, when I take Miami's defense up against a young quarterback, I completely agree with you. I do like the under in this game. If I had to make a lean, to me, I think Bama is going to pull away in the second half. I think the first half is close, but I think the talent level between these two is still big enough where if I had to pick a side, I would do that with Bama. But clearly my lean here for this show and for all viewers is to take the under.
All right, good to hear. Like lining up with Ralph Michaels there towards the under. And Robbie, Ralph mentioned it. The Alabama, OC going from Sark, one of the better play callers that heck in the country, really. And before that, Lane Kiffin, now Bill O'Brien. Nothing against them. He's just got big shoes to fill with a new quarterback as well. Those are some reasons I'm pointing towards the under. See if you agree on that and your overall view here, Alabama and Miami, Robbie.
Well, I think Bill O'Brien's experience speaks for itself, right? New England with Bill Belichick. He's the guy who went in and turned Penn State around after the fiasco with Jerry Sandusky and actually made them halfway decent. And then, of course, to the Houston Texans. The play calling might be a little bit more pro style, traditional out of O'Brien, maybe play action a little more than Sarkisian was, or certainly more than Lane Kiffin is. But I still think they'll be fine. Couple of things here. I think when you just break the game down to fundamentals, I always compare Nick Saban to Bill Belichick in the fact that what they like to do is they like to take away the other team's strength. And offensively for Miami, that strength would be the versatility of De'Aaron King, right? I think most people believe that if you keep De'Aaron King in the pocket, you've got a better chance at survival than if he escapes the pocket. So Ralph mentioned how good he feels Alabama's defense is going to be this year. And a portion of that defensive superiority that they'll have is that group of linebackers that they bring back. I wouldn't be surprised, Drew, if we see some kind of spy on De'Aaron King in this game to avoid any of those plays that might break down where he scrambles out and gets big yardage. I think Alabama, with all this time to prepare, will be ready for stuff like that. You got the second year of Rhett Lashley coordinating this offense. And just for kicks, I went back, knowing that Rhett Lashley was the OC at Auburn, and tried to see how he did against Alabama when he was there. He was the offensive coordinator from 2013 to 2016. In those 4 years, the first year was the kick six. They win 34-28. Auburn gained 393 total yards in that game. The next year, Auburn loses, but they score 44 points and they gain 630 total yards against Alabama's defense. After that, it got worse for Auburn, only 13 points and 261 total yardage in 15, and only 12 points and 182 total yardage in 16. I think the biggest difference in those numbers, guys, the fact that they were really good the first 2 years, he had a good quarterback. Nick Marshall was the quarterback of that team those 2 years. After that, it was Jeremy Johnson and John Franklin, 2 duds at Auburn. Here he's got De'Aaron King, so it'll be interesting to me to see if he can do something with all these offensive parts, led by De'Aaron King, in the second year of his system. As Ralph mentioned, Ralph, I know that both of us do a show in Miami, Drew, with the Greek in South Florida, and
Sure.
all indications out of there are that De'Aaron King is 100% ready to roll here. Still, Alabama's defense, I just can't shake the fact that I think they'll be ready. The question for me will be, how good is Bryce Young right out of the chute? The kid who's already earned $1 million and hasn't taken a snap yet. If he's real good to start, and remember, Manny Diaz has taken total control of this defense. It's his now. He's the head coach and defensive coordinator. So this is his shot. You'd rather play Alabama early right now than play them later in the year. My power ratings were a little more generous to Alabama than Ralph's were. I made them 23, which is even steeper than what the current price is. So I think I would lean Alabama. Nothing I've played yet, though, and I can't disagree with you guys on the under. Interesting
analysis there, Robbie. Going back to his days at Auburn, which I can get into. Ralph, yeah, go ahead, man.
Lashley did an article in the Fort Lauderdale paper talking about how he thinks the way to attack Alabama with a mobile quarterback is their linebackers aren't up to covering because they normally don't have to. But one point I want to make for the Alabama defense, for all those to note this year, the last 5 seasons, Alabama has returned 5, 5, 3, 5, and 5 defensive players because they get so many NFL defensive players drafted. So this year they return 8. So for 5 years, they averaged under 5 defensive starters back and had the defense they've have. We'll see how they start off with 8 defensive returners back on that side of the ball.
Yeah, kind of reloading there in Alabama, Ralph, for sure.
Yeah, and real quick, the knock on Alabama's defense for a couple of years was they couldn't handle mobile quarterbacks. They gave them the most trouble. I just think, you've had all summer, spring and summer to get ready for this game. I feel like Nick Saban will be ready here, but we'll see. De'Ara King's a special breed, and maybe Rhett Lashley can bring the best out in him.
And Robbie, you going back to his Auburn days, Rhett Lashley talking about the offensive coordinator here under Gus Malzahn. One difference I'll say is I don't know if that was more Gus Malzahn's offense. And of course, they run very, very similar. Actually, Rhett Lashley was the high school quarterback for Gus Malzahn going back that far when Gus Malzahn started in this business. But you bring up the fact Nick Marshall in 2013, that kick 6 year, and they went all the way to the national championship, Robbie. One thing I'll point out is Nick Marshall was a heck of an athlete. I'm talking, he played 5 years for the Jacksonville Jaguars, not as a quarterback in the defensive backfield and playing special teams for him. That's what kind of athlete he was running around. And then after that, they had kind of like the stationary quarterback, and that's why the offense fell off. So it's good to see Derek King here with Miami able to extend plays with his feet. I think that will help Miami, Robbie, against this Alabama defense, like you talked about.
Yeah, that's the point of the whole thing, Drew, is that in 16 or 15 and 16, when the numbers fell off, I mean, we all remember Jeremy Johnson and John Franklin, they were complete busts as quarterbacks at Auburn, where Nick Marshall, like you said, a dual threat, much in the category of King, or King, much in the category of Nick Marshall, however you want to put it. They're very, very similar in ability. And Rhett Lashley had success with that type of quarterback against this defense in Alabama. Ralph just went over some numbers, and no matter how many they returned, they're always really good. And Lashley had success against 2 really good Alabama defenses. So with all the pieces in place at Miami, like I say, it'll be interesting to see how he handles the Alabama defense. I'd anticipate a spy on him. But again, like I said before, there's a couple of years where Alabama just had a difficult time handling dual threat quarterbacks. And that was kind of when Nick Saban decided he was going to turn into the 21st century and become more of a spread guy. Remember, he used to kind of frown upon these teams playing spread against him with dual threat quarterbacks, but that's not the case anymore.
Nice. He's transitioned for sure, guys. As we got 3 games left here, we'll move down the list. Give Robbie Veno a follow on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, and Ralph Michaels on Twitter at Cal Sports LV. So next game up, guess we could head to the biggest barking dog, at least in my opinion here, Ralph. We get the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns catching near 10, call it -9 right now. Of course, it opened Texas -12. That was a while ago, Ralph. We've actually seen it go down to 7.5, 8, and a little bit of a bounce back money here on Texas. 58 being the total. This one in Austin, 4:30 start on Saturday, Ralph. Interested in your opinion here. You think the dogs barking with the Sun Belt team? Ranked Sun Belt team, all at it that, Ralph.
Drew, these are one of the games where my power rating had it at 11. So the opening number I liked ULL. On this number now, I like Texas. And, I don't always go by what my numbers say, but in this game, it does play out that way. Number one, I never like being on that public dog week one. We always see some dog where the line moves and everybody's on them and they're playing this group of Power 5 team that they think they're going to pull the upset, and, inevitably the game doesn't go that way. When I broke down this game, number one, ULL being a ranked team, all of a sudden, this is in this kid's head. When you're breaking down and you're practicing and you're a ranked team and you're an AP top 25 team, there is no question these practicing are going to get inflated heads. This isn't Alabama or Ohio State who expect to be ranked every week. This is the first time a Sun Belt team has been ranked. Remember, they didn't even win the Sun Belt. They finished second. Then I break down the stats. Everyone talks about ULL's incredible season and how Texas was down last year, going 7-3. Well, ULL was plus 66 yards per game with their Sun Belt schedule. Texas, in their down year, was plus 68 yards per game with the 15th toughest schedule in the country. So when you're comparing apples to apples, it is like, why is this team getting so much love? Yes, they have 19 returning starters. Texas still has 15. But what's the difference? Texas was the number 15 recruiting class last year and even higher the year before. So I break it down with one of the best O-lines and one of the best D-lines in the country for Texas. You have Robinson in the running game. I think the lines of scrimmage are going to be a mismatch. Texas, the one downfall Texas does have is depth. When Sarkisian took over, they did have 16 players transfer out, which happens often when you have a new coach. But again, looking where these teams finished last year, the records are semi-misleading. Yes, ULL beat Iowa State in the opener, but they got outgained. They won that game because they were plus 2 turnovers. Line of scrimmage mismatch. I think Texas pulls away in the second half and covers this. I do like the under as well. I think Texas is happy to run the ball. I think they're going to be a run-first team with that O-line and Robinson. And I think their D-line can shut down ULL even with their quality offense, but their quality offense for a group of 5 team. Their offense would not compare to a Power 5 top 10 unit.
And Robbie, what are you thinking in Austin?
Yeah, well, you and I, Drew, actually just went over this game, so we'll do it twice here for the new audience. But ULL won't be in awe of anything. I mean, they went into Ames, Iowa last year and won that game against Iowa State when they were a larger dog and they weren't supposed to come close. And it was a coronavirus year. Maybe you can throw that in there. But just to the fact of their confidence level with almost every single body coming back to the starting units, their confidence won't be shaken here. Whether or not they have huge egos, I'm not sure. Ralph painted it as pro-ULL money or pro-ULL love. And maybe I'll take the side of the initial line move towards ULL as anti-Texas money for a couple of reasons here. First of all, it's a complete coaching overhaul, right, guys? This isn't just plug and play again. These are overhauls. On the offensive side, Kyle Flood, the new offensive coordinator, but Sarkisian will be the play caller. They've nicknamed this offense all gas, no break. New formations were installed, new terminology, new route combinations, new blocking schemes, and you've got a second-year freshman quarterback at his very first start ever, Hudson Card, who has tried all of 3 pass attempts. Now, Sam Ellinger's a 4-year starter. It's a lot to lose. That's a guy who's bailed them out of a lot of fires in the past. Can this kid do the same against a defense that only allowed 355 yards last year and returns 10 starters? We'll find out. The majority of this offensive personnel on Texas has never played this system. They're recruited there. They played different systems. In fact, this is the 3rd defensive system in the last 3 years as Tom Herman tried to save his job. On the defensive side of the football here, again, huge overhaul, new schemes. Pete Kwiatkowski is your new defensive coordinator. And again, Drew, we've talked about this a couple of times, but his defense is unique. Comes from that Washington defense with Jimmy Lake, where they run a 2-4-5, 2 down linemen, 11 guys in all. And I think the most crucial point about this is he doesn't change personnel. He limits personnel changes. He picks 11 guys, they play. And the reason he does it, he calls his defense anti-tempo defense. But the reason he keeps the same 11 on the field is because he doesn't want the other offense to change their personnel. Until a team gets inside the red zone, basically he's not taking his 11 off the field, which means if he play calls differently from play to play, if he goes from 2-man line to maybe 3 down linemen, new responsibilities, new everything as far as the 11 guys on the field. Can you grasp all of that in your very first outing against Levi Lewis and a team that's full of playmakers? You know, they lose their running backs, but Chris Smith, the third teamer, is just as much a home run threat as the other 2 guys were, just not built as big. One last thing I'll say about this 11 guys on the field for Kwiatkowski is it's 99 degrees in Austin, Texas on Saturday, supposed to be. This isn't Seattle, Washington, where you get away with just leaving 11 guys hung out there for every single snap against an up-tempo team. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if this defense gets tired, a little bit fatigued second half, or if he has to go against his basic philosophy and just start making personnel changes, which allows Billy Napier to do the same on the other side. So that's going to be an interesting battle. You know, the ULL side, like I said, a ton of players back. They would have been in the championship game against Coastal Carolina last year. It got postponed because of coronavirus. I think Ralph's absolutely right. Where Texas is going to try to succeed on offense is in the running game. It's the best friend for a freshman quarterback like they have here in Card. I wonder about that 2-4-5 alignment here. As I said to you earlier, Drew, my best recommendation here is maybe second half or in-game over the total. I think this game might start out slow. But as Hudson Card learns to adjust to the game, I think Texas' offense will get better. As 99-degree heat and fatigue take its toll on Texas' 11-man defense, I think ULL's defense will get better. So maybe something, look in-game or look second half over. That's the way I'd go.
Ralph, what just in follow-up to Robbie, you know, that 11-man defense, and I'm sure that they can, you know, obviously not do that the whole game, but does that worry you at all? And also new system, young quarterback for Texas having to win by margin. How much is that worrying you, Ralph?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to give Robbie a shitload of credit there. That was a great breakdown of the new defensive systems, and it'll actually make me go back. Let me rewind a little bit and say, while I like Texas here, my opinion on the total would be first half under, and take away that under for the full game, because you know, watching the Fresno State game, I was on Fresno State last week, and you know, even teams like Fresno that practice in those 90 degrees, when it's 100 degrees on the turf, we saw how many people cramped up in the second half of that game. So taking that into consideration, Rob, great breakdown. I'll change my totals opinion under to the first half.
Hey, we're making moves here. Robbie, Veno, and Ralph making some changes. But Robbie, I'll let you end it here in this game before we move on, buddy.
Yeah, that number, because I looked at it, was 28.5 first half. And I thought to myself, you know what, 28.5 looks like a pretty good play first half under, just if you expect slow starting first half, getting used to each other, especially offenses getting used to defenses. So, yeah, I totally agree with Ralph. It's something I've already looked at as well.
We got the nightcap we'll save for last, so we'll head here towards Fresno State and Oregon for the next game here, Ralph. We get 64 being the total in Eugene, seeing Oregon 20.5, some shops showing minus 21 here. And, of course, something that pops into my head, Ralph, when I look at this game, because we don't get it a lot, and that's Fresno State already have played a game. Oregon has not. And a lot of times you'd think, oh, that's a huge advantage for the team that's played a game. However, you know, there's film out, and actually you go back a number of years here, and it's a slight advantage towards the team that didn't play a game in terms of against the spread anyway, Ralph. I would look towards Oregon, not only on that, but just Fresno State, nationally televised game. Everybody saw them smash UConn, but UConn, what really is that, Ralph? That's, I don't know if I'd put too much emphasis into that win. So I'd lean here towards the Ducks, but what are you thinking, Fresno State and Oregon?
I am pissed at Joe. Joe is back producing the show, and I think he sent you the bet on a clip. I talked about the game under the belt, and how many newsletters or how many write-ups do you read where it says, oh, this team has a game under their belt? Drew, I'm going to quantify what you said. Going back the last 15 years, when a team has had a game under their belt playing their second game against a team playing their first, the team playing their first game against a team with a game under their belt has covered 54% of the time. So great point, Drew. It's the team with experience has 46%. And often you see because you get an inflated line. Look at the UCLA LSU line this week. If UCLA hadn't dominated Hawaii, I don't think we'd be looking at a 3 on the game. You get that love for a team that has a big game. Now, Fresno's playing Oregon, so they may not get that much love, but yes, they have experience, and I still think it helps for the most part, despite the negative number. I look at this game, and Fresno looked impressive, but let's put it in perspective. UConn is one of the bottom 4 teams in the FBS. UConn lost 20 people in the offseason because they didn't play football last year. UConn hadn't played its game in 700 days, and UConn was down 2 defensive lineman starters. So when you look at Fresno and you say, oh my God, they had a 7.0 to 1.8 yards per play diff, it's like, okay, that's great, but this isn't Oregon. Jake Haener, probably going to be the Mountain West Player of the Year for me in my mind. The Fresno quarterback did have some cramping. He came out late in the game. I'm sure he's going to be able to look at if the weather's going to be hot again. Oregon's DC, they've gone through some changes. A starting quarterback transferred to Texas Tech. Who do they have? Anthony Brown, who was a BC quarterback, who now has been in the system for a couple years, will get the start. Defensive coordinator, now the head coach of Boise, so you go through some changes there. But I like what I'm reading about Oregon's defense. I think their offense isn't going to be as dynamic. I think their defense is going to be up a notch. I was very impressed with the Fresno defense going into the UConn game. I was very impressed coming out of the UConn game, even though it was UConn. So here's another game that I am going to lean with the under. I have no play on the side. I do think Fresno State knows that a loss here doesn't mean that much to them. But I do also think that if Oregon gets ahead, you have Ohio State on the road next week. So if you're ahead late in the game, might you pull some starters? So Fresno, if they're down, I think they're a live back door. If Oregon's close in the half, I think Oregon would pull away. So that may seem sort of contrary, but to me, you look at that third quarter. If Oregon needs to play their starters, I think they could pull away. If they're comfortable at half and come out of halftime thinking they're going to play some backups to get ready for Ohio State, then Fresno State, to me, is a live backdoor cover. So it's sort of a live betting situation for me, depending how the first half goes.
I like it, Ralph. Great breakdown. And going back to the beginning there, no, Joe didn't send me any of your notes or anything like that. It's actually a trend that I've followed for the last couple years in college football, because I've thought about it myself. How much does watching film on your opponent actually help you? I think it does help you in you quantifying that with the 54%, which, guys, if you're not following him on Twitter, you need to, at CalSportsLV. He quantifies a lot of ATS trends there, and they can help you in your handicapping. But Robbie, finish us up here in the Fresno State Oregon game, buddy.
Yeah, a lot of what Ralph said, I totally agree with. First off, the Fresno UConn game is a major step up for Fresno State in class, right? Last week, they scored 2 touchdowns in one play. They had a 61-yard touchdown, 86-yard touchdown. Then they had a fumble return for touchdown. UConn, meanwhile, had 14 drives in that game, 11 punts, a fumble, and 2 turnovers on downs. They only had 1 drive that produced more than 19 yards. But that's not Oregon. I mean, you're looking at a stable of offensive game breakers. C.J. Verdell back at running back, Micah Pittman, Johnny Johnson at receiver. I mean, they're absolutely loaded On the offensive side of the football, the question, of course, that everybody asks is Anthony Brown. I think his Heisman numbers were something exorbitant. I did a Heisman show earlier this year, back in the spring, where they asked me to take a flyer on somebody. I said, take a flyer on Anthony Brown. If Oregon wins the Pac-12 and if they make it to the championship, the 4-game playoff, then that means he's played really, really well. He's a dual threat quarterback. Did have some big moments last year at times for Oregon. So offensively, they're pretty much fine. Real quick to Tim DeRuyter as the defensive coordinator here, something very, very different than what I described at Texas. Tim DeRuyter came in. He kept their 3-4 defense. He kept a lot of the concepts. He kept the terminology. He wanted to keep it all familiar because they had a lot of returnees and a lot of talent there and didn't want to switch it up on them. So head coach Mario Cristobal, thankful for that, and actually praised DeRuyter's ability to teach these kids. He said he's the one defensive coordinator I've had that eliminates confusion and teaches a much easier way to learn and communicate. So they've grasped what he's selling here. He hasn't taken his playbook and tried to jam the personnel into it. He's done quite the opposite. Still, guys, I think both of these defenses are going to be somewhat tested here. I'm going to lean on or give an advantage to Kalen DeBoer and his offensive play calling. If they can somehow, some way, scheme Kevon Thibodeau from being an absolute beast off the edge in this game, then I think Haener and that passing attack can be a little bit successful here against the Oregon secondary. Remember that Oregon midsummer loses their leading tackler. He transferred out to SMU, Isaac Slade Matuitia. Let's get that right. 126 tackles in the last 2 years. Led the team, inside linebacker. Kind of a surprise transfer out. Creates a void that Oregon probably can fill, but maybe not fill to the capacity in week 1 that they'd like to. I think that Oregon will test Fresno's pass defense. Listen, coming into last week, Fresno's pass defense was questionable. UConn couldn't exploit it. Oregon can. I think that in the end, both of these teams will hit the scoreboard. I'm not surprised that the total's gone up from 61 to 63. At some point, it gets a little bit dicey, though, because 64, 65 especially is a key number. First half was 31.5. I might choose that, but in some capacity, I think I'll get involved with the over here because I think both of these offenses are going to have decent days. I'll give an advantage here to DeBoer and his play calling ability and his scheming ability over the Oregon defense.
All right, boys, we got time for one more. It's the nightcap on Saturday, neutral field here. We're heading to Allegiant Stadium in the desert, Las Vegas, Nevada. We get BYU and Arizona. We saw BYU open -10. We're seeing mostly -12s now at the WagerTalk odds screen, 53 being the total. Ralph, coming to you first in this one. I mean, it's 10:30 Eastern on ESPN. Likely a lot of tickets written here. Kickoff in Las Vegas, of course. You liking anything here, Cougars versus the Wildcats?
Well, living in Las Vegas, number one, for those that remember a few years back when the Mountain West Championship was here, when BYU was here, the city gets flooded with BYU people. There's going to be a massive BYU edge. There's over 60,000 tickets sold, and I bet it's at least 2-1. Maybe 3-1, maybe 4-1 BYU crowd. So to me, although both people are playing in a brand new venue, I give a point, maybe 1.5 to BYU in this game. My power ratings have them 12. If I add 1.5, that's 13.5. So does that mean I'm on BYU? No, I'm not. Yes, they had a great season last year, but look at who they played. No Power 5 teams. They played in one of the weakest schedules in the country in their mishmash schedule to get where they were. And look what they lost. In a season that most teams are returning 16 returning starters, they're only returning 11. And the biggest deal is the starters they lost. You can lose starters and be okay. But when you're BYU and lose a quarterback who's playing in the NFL and 10 players that either got drafted or signed UFA contracts to the NFL, Alabama and Ohio State can lose 10 players to the NFL and regroup. BYU, to me, I am not laying double digits away from home for a team that lost 10 players that may be playing in the NFL this year. But does that mean I'm on Arizona? No. What did Arizona do last year? They got outgained by 104 yards per game. That was one of the worst in football. Yes, there's a new coach. Yes, there's excitement. They're gonna rotate quarterbacks. To me, they're not as bad as they were last year, but I just cannot lay the points with BYU in this situation. So unfortunately, I'm in a situation here that I'm not going to give an opinion except this. If Arizona looks as bad as they did last year and goes into halftime down, I think BYU can extend the lead in the second half. If Arizona has some excitement, maybe gets a turnover, maybe gets an offensive drive in the first half and competitive, I think that'll carry them into the second half.
Fair enough, Ralph. And Robbie, what are you thinking here in the nightcap in Vegas?
All right, I'm going to throw, bias out there because I'll put my X up here because when I see Jedd Fisch's name, I run for the hills. That's your new head coach at Arizona. He's an NFL type guy. His stuff works in the NFL, guys, but it doesn't work in college football. I mean, I go back to when he coached Minnesota, got that job. It's too complex for the majority of these kids to even understand what he's trying to teach. I don't like the hire. I don't like Arizona's offense out of the chute here with him at the helm. This offense is the polar opposite of Kevin Sumlin. The kids who are already in this system don't fit what Jedd Fisch wants to do here with his offense. It's pro style, unlike the extreme tempo spread that Sumlin was running. What's worse is you have three quarterbacks on your depth chart that have never even played this system. You've got Jordan McLeod, South Florida transfer. You've got Will Plummer, who was the freshman starter for a few games last year. And you've got Gunnar Cruz, a kid who came over from Washington State. They don't play anything like pro style at Washington State, no matter if it was Leach or if it's Nick Rolovich. So I've got quarterbacks that don't fit the system. And to make it worse, these kids have never taken a snap under center. Jedd Fisch's offense, right out of his mouth, we're going to have 35% of our snaps from under center. And that's what they had to work on the spring, just getting it from the center to the quarterback because these kids all play shotgun. So for me, no dice on that offense. I think BYU's defense can contain them fairly easily. It's their third defensive scheme in the last 3 seasons. If you're talking about Arizona, you go through Marcel Bates, the guy from Boise State, who they brought in, ran a 4-2-5. Then they quickly changed it next year to Paul Rhodes, former Iowa State guy, 3-4 gets run then. So you change your fronts from even to odd. And now Don Brown from Michigan comes in with his 4-3 and extreme heavy blitz. To tell you the truth, I like that for this first game because without Zach Wilson and, as Ralph mentioned, the talent that was lost on the offensive side, I think you got Jacob Conover, a freshman at quarterback here for BYU. I think you want to pressure BYU this year. I think that they want to go back to more run-oriented style offense at BYU. And I think Brown's scheme, even though it's new to Arizona, probably fits better against this particular team. I know that BYU can go to Michigan tape and watch some Don Brown film, but still, I don't know if their talent's good enough to overcome a lot of pressure here. So for me, the play here is under the total. It's already been bet down a little bit. I don't expect a ton of offense, or at least not the explosiveness that BYU had last year. Remember again that they lose their offensive coordinator from last year as well. BYU does. So kind of a new start here for them. I think their offense gets tamed a little bit. I think Arizona's offense is an out-and-out disaster. I could be wrong, but I just don't see Jedd Fisch getting it right in the very first game. So I'll take under 50. I think I see 54 and a half, Drew, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm seeing it's getting a little bit lower now, 53 and a half at most shops right now. But Ralph, did you want to throw out anything else in conclusion, buddy?
No, but I did love the Robbie X. So, now I'm, so I'm going to have the pen and Rob's going to have the X. He had to come up with something. Nice call, Rob.
Dead fish, no dice. No dice.
Good stuff, boys. Pen up and all. That's the four games. So
get those pens up.
all right, boys. Well, hopefully you liked it. College football today going each and every day at this time slot here. WagerTalk YouTube channel, and best damn college football side of it is on Wednesday. So come back and join us. Ralph Michaels, Rob Veno, and myself, Drew Martin. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something, and best of luck with your bets this weekend. For Ralph, Rob, I am Drew. We'll talk to you next Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in.
We've rolled back our football prices. WagerTalk's first full year was 2015, and we've lowered our football season packages to match what we charged that football season. Why? It's simple. We want to make our season-long packages an extraordinary value. You can buy a full college football season or full NFL season for only $5.99 each. But if you buy a college football NFL combo from the same handicapper, you pay only $8.99. Looking to mix and match handicappers? We have you covered. Just email support@wagertalk.com for a bundle discount and to create any handicapper combo you can dream of. Would you like to bet $20 and win $100 at BetMGM regardless of your wager's outcome and get $100 in free wager bucks? Just go